So this is Marty Wilson. I'm in the Monroe County Historical Association talking to Mr. Pat Ross. It's January 19th, about 1:30 in the afternoon or so, and we're here to talk about Pat's interesting life. He was born in the South. He's going to tell us that here in a second. And about his connection to the Hawthorne House. Okay, so Pat, let's start with where you were born, your parents, anything that you choose to remember about your childhood that you choose to relate to us about your childhood.
Okay, I was born in Greenville, South Carolina, September the 9th, 1939, in room 9, weighed 9 pounds, 9 ounces, but my mother didn't have 9 kids, so that was it. And then I lived in Greenville until 1962. My father was a pharmacist that owned a drugstore, and I went to high school in Greenville and was very active in the athletic program. And then I went to a couple universities, and because I really didn't have any direction as what I wanted to do at that time. So then my sister graduated from Queens College in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I don't know the exact date, but it was probably 1959 or 60 or something in that time period. And she got a job working for Brooks Brothers in New York City. And she met someone that lived in Delaware Water Gap, and they roomed together and whatever. So on the weekends, she came to Delaware Water Gap with the girl's name was Dotsie Hauser, who lived in front of the Deerhead Inn. And then, of course, they were young girls at that time, so they would go across the street to the Deerhead Inn and listen to the jazz. And one of the people sitting in there was Reese Dangler, who was the son of Leroy Dangler, who owned Hawthorne Inn and Cottages in Mount Pocono. So they started going out together, and then they ended up getting married, and I think maybe in 1961 or 60 or sometime like that. And so, as I said, at that point, I didn't really have too much direction as what I wanted to do. I graduated from a junior college, North Greenville Junior College. So I had an associate's degree. And then my sister called me up and said, "What are you doing this summer?" I said, "Not much." So she said, "Why don't you come up to Hawthorn Inn and work as a bellhop?" And I said, "Okay." So I got on the bus, went to Hawthorn Inn, stopped in Mount Pocono. No, I didn't. I took a train. I don't know how I got to Philadelphia. Maybe I flew or something. But anyway, I took a bus from wherever I landed. And so it stopped in front of the Del Mar restaurant, which was a restaurant in Mount Pocono, which I learned later is where all the employees of the resorts went after hours because it was open to like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And ironically, right next door to it was the state police barracks. But they never really raided it or did anything, so most people went there, and they never had any trouble there. And so I got out, and they told the bartender, "If you have this southern boy who comes in here and wants a bourbon and water, call us, because that's my brother-in-law, and he's coming up here to work." And so I went in there and called him and went in and got settled. And at that point in time, all of the employees lived on the premises of the resorts because they had places for them to live. And so then the Bellhop and went down to the Vivo Corsimos, which was a men's store down in Main Street, and got a Bellhop's uniform with the gold things and the suit and the tie and whatever. And so the first Saturday that I was there, I think I made, I don't know, 18, 20 bucks, and I thought I was in hog heaven. And then, they had college girls working there. Of course, at that time, you had a lot of people, professional hotel workers, that would work up here. And then after Columbus Day, all except the big resorts like Pocono Manor, Skytop, Buck Hill. They closed. And so these people would go to Florida and work and then come back the next summer and do that. And so you had some of the professionals, and then you also had college kids that were working there as waiters and waitresses, and most of the chambermaids and all were professional people. And so I just happened to see this girl that was working there, Joan. She was from Carbondale, Pennsylvania, and was a junior at East Stroudsburg. And so then we started going out together and whatever, and so I met her in June or July. We got married, not married, but we got engaged in October. So I called up my parents at a phone booth right across from the ESU there on the corner. Used to be a service station there. Called up my parents and told them, I said, I want you to talk to Joan. I'm going out with an Italian Catholic. And they both hung up the phone at that point in time. But fortunately, they became, I think they ended up being more favorable to her than they were me, because she kind of got me straightened out on what I wanted to do. And so then in 1963, I didn't come back up here for some reason. I went back to Greenville. And then in 64, I came back, and I've been here ever since. And at that point, Dr. Kaler, Leroy Kaler, was president of ESU. And so my brother-in-law said, why don't you go over and talk to him? So I went over to talk to him and started going to ESU. And then I graduated from ESU in 1967.
With a degree in?
BS in social studies and whatever. So I was an education degree, so okay. I taught school in Bethlehem, as I told you earlier, for 33 years. And then, as I say, I graduated from there, and we got married in May 28th, 1966. And she was teaching in Harrisburg, and then she got a job at elementary school in Tannersville, which has since was consumed by fire. And she taught there. And then I graduated, and I couldn't get a job around here because of politics, because I was getting involved in politics. And so I couldn't get a job.
How did getting involved in politics?
Well, because I was supporting somebody that some people on the school board didn't support and whatever, so I didn't get a job, which incidentally turned out to be very good in my respect. So it was August, and I graduated, and I didn't have a job. So I got a call from the Bethlehem Area School District that they had an opening in social studies in the Bethlehem Area School District. So I went down for an interview. I actually wasn't going because it was so far, and my wife got in the car with me to make sure that I went to the interview. And so I went to the interview, and I got the job. And so I had to commute down there.
This was at Nichman?
Nichman, it's on Union and 8th and Union Boulevard or something. And so I had a 1966 Candy Apple Red Mustang. In the first snowstorm, if you know the Mustang, they had no weight in the back or anything. And 33 stopped at 512 at the time, so I had to turn there and go down 512 to Bethlehem. And if you know, in Moorestown, there's a big hill that goes up like that, and here I am sliding, scared to death. So finally I got up on 33, and then it just wouldn't go. And so I had to pull over on the side of the road. And of course, there are no cell phones or anything, so I had to stand along the side of the road till somebody picked me up. And then got a ride up and had to call the state police and don't tow my car or whatever, because I'm going to come pick it up tomorrow. So I went the next day, and then immediately went to Sears Roebuck, which was located right down the street here, and got some chains and a jack that I could put chains on if I ever needed them again. And so after that, let's see, got married in 66, And then we lived in, my wife didn't have a driver's license at the time, so we got an apartment on 611 next to Gans Horn's funeral home. Gans Horn's was right here, and then there was a brand new apartment right next door, $80 a month, heat, and it was furnished. And so it got winter, and the apartment was very cold because they control the heat. And so I went over and mentioned Mr. Gans Horn's. I said, you know, it's so cold in there that I'm having to turn on the hot water to get steam to heat up the apartment. He said, if you don't like it, move. I said, okay. And so then, and ironically, it was one big room with like doors that separated the kitchen and the living room from the bedroom. And so right here was also a door, because Ganshorn had a farm. They sold eggs, and if you opened that door, we'd be in bed and I'd sleep and said, tell Mr. Ganshorn Pocono Diner got 4 dozen eggs or something like that. So it was ironic. But finally, I got to know Mrs. Ganshorn very well, and she said, don't worry, Pat, I'll take care of the heat. And then it was, of course, right next to the funeral home. And so when they had viewings, you could hear people over there, and when they were very sad, you could hear them crying and all that kind of stuff. So we stayed there, and then, I don't know what year, and then probably one of the best things that ever happened was that I was asked to join the Tannersville Lions Club. And so that was in 1970. And so I joined, and I got to meet a lot of people in there. And I was asked to serve on the park board in Pocono Township, of which I did. And I don't know if you know Jeff Evans or not, but Jeff Evans was in charge of the Monroe County Recreation Area. And so I served on the park board for a while. The Pocono Township had gotten a grant to build a Mountain View Park, which is there now. And I think it was $565,000 to build it. And of course, being a federal government grant, you had to pay prevailing wage back then as well, and so it was very expensive to build, but it turned out very well. It's 84 acres, and the township paid $1 an acre, which is it was $84,000 for 89 acres or something like that, which goes all the way from right where Barley Creek is on Sullivan Trail all the way to Route 80, and it's been developed in quite a nice park. And I don't know how much more detail you want me to go into, so I stayed around, then I served on the Planning Commission, and then in 1977 I was elected to Pocono Township Supervisor, and was there until 2007, which was 30 years.
And the whole time you're driving to Bethlehem?
I was driving to Bethlehem every day.
Richmond, and didn't you say?
And then in 1981 I switched to East Hills.
Okay.
Because they went to the middle school, and I didn't like the principal that was coming to the other one, to Richmond, and he probably didn't like me, so it was a even swap for me to go to another school, of which I liked, and it was actually good, because if you taught up here, everywhere you would go, you'd see students, and not that you didn't want to associate with them outside of school, but then if I wanted to do something down there, then I came up here, it wasn't bad. So, but my wife, back when she got pregnant, you had to quit. They didn't have any maternity leave.
Yeah, this is the sixth.
1972.
72.
70. I think my daughter, she's 51, so it's 70. And so she had to quit. And so she quit teaching and stayed home for like 8 or 9 years until my kids were, and then she tried to get a job back, and again, she couldn't get the job back. And then finally, she'd been out 10 years, and she taught first grade and kindergarten, And so they asked her to come in and teach third grade up in Pocono Township. And the first day she came home, she said, "Man, have things changed in 10 years." And so she had a tough time with the third graders in there and whatever. And then Joe Batista was an English teacher, and he went to observe her and really gave her a higher rating. And then next, she was just filling in for someone, and the next year they hired her as a kindergarten or first grade teacher. I forget what it was. And so she stayed there until she retired in 2001, which I retired in 1999 from teaching. And so then I got involved in politics, and then when you teach, you don't really have much time to do anything else. I was very active in the Lions Club, and of course with township business and whatever. And let's see.
Well, you said you got involved in politics, but in what?
And I was a township supervisor. Then I got involved with the Republican Party and did this. And then I've served on the Pennsylvania Township Association of Supervisors. I served in several positions, state positions with them over the years. And then I got involved with local things. I've been on the board of East Stroudsburg University since 1996. And then I was on I just resigned this year from the Monroe County Conservation District. I was on there for close to 20 years. I served with Amy's husband, who was an associate member. It was always an asset. And then I have been head of the United Way campaigns, and I'm on the Salvation Army board, and very active in Our Lady of Victory Catholic Church in Tannersville. And I'm sure there's something that I left out. You could ask my wife, because I'm always going out. And then in 2007, I was running for re-election and got beat. And I don't care who you are, you say it doesn't bother you, it does, because it hurts your ego a little bit. And then I got beat, I think, by 15 votes. And so, you know, you can look back, and everybody after the election said they voted for you, whether you won or lost. So, you know, and then there's a list of people you can get that vote, so I know who was telling the truth and who wasn't. So, but it was ironic, but actually it turned out to work out well, because I've done very well since that period of time, and I've had more time to do other stuff. And but it was something I thoroughly enjoyed doing, and I think that overall that we did a pretty good job in Pocono Township over the years.
You've had a pretty full life so far.
Yes, well,
It's
I hope it.
Not over yet, right?
I hope so. I was just telling somebody today, 3 years from today, we'll be having a inauguration, and I said I just hope I'm around to see it. And but no, I have had a pretty full life. But Mr. Dangler, who owned Hawthorn Inn, was a very interesting gentleman, and I became very close to him. He, I think he was a teacher down in Westchester, and then he came up here with his mother, and they ran Hawthorn Inn.
And where was the Hawthorn Inn?
It's on 611. If you go up past, I don't know if you knew where West Casket Golf Course was, and right where you turn off to go into Mount Airy off of 611 on Fairview, there was a 9-hole golf course across. If you go right up to the crest of the hill, you took a left, and Hawthorn Inn was located up there on 70-something acres. Had a beautiful view, and it was like a Dirty Dancing, if you ever saw that movie. It was like a Dirty Dancing resort. The same people came back every year at the same week and would make the reservations before they left that year to come back. And then most of the employees came back there. When it really started going the people started passing away, and then their kids would come back. But then you got modernization and all of these other hotels, and this wasn't really that modern. And then you could go to the Bahamas or somewhere for as much as you could come up here, and so it was just a dynamic. But Mr. Dangler probably had a vision, a lot of things that he tried to do. He and Senator Monty Crow, which owned Crow Insurance here for many years, they put together a commission called the Rim Parkway of the Poconos. They wanted to do something like the Blue Ridge Parkway and go all across the top of the Poconos and have a parkway. Well, they got the commission and they got the plans and everything, but they were never funded. And it would have been really beneficial to the area. And the next thing he wanted to do, where you had 3-lane highways, he wanted to put a medium in there, nothing but trees and flowers, because the 3-way highway was not very safe. And then he also, he and Roger Miller, who owned a printing company up in, I can't think of the name of it, Pocono something, I don't know. They put out This Week in the Poconos and whatever.
Oh, I know.
Printing Craftsman.
Yeah, Printing Craftsman.
Yeah.
And then Roger Miller, and then the person that owned Memory Town. I forget his name. 5 years ago, I could have told you. And then, and they started the airport in Mount Pocono, and they were very, very interested in it. And they had a guy that lived in Mount Pocono by the name of Vince Reski, who ran it. And it's still there. I think it's just this little small cabin that was there, and they had some planes coming in and some planes going out, but not that many. And then Mr. Dangler was also one of the original members of the Pocono International Raceway. His son-in-law, Dave Montgomery, was the president, and they used to meet at Hawthorne Inn when I was a bellhop, and the Prices, Ray and Dick Price, and a few other local people started. They bought a big spinach farm out there. I think it was 1,000 acres. And so they built it originally. And it was going to be for Indianapolis cars and not NASCAR. And so Dr. Marioli flew into the airport up there once, and Mr. Dangler was there and gave him his card, said you should get involved in the racetrack. Now Dr. Marioli was from Old Forge, but he and his wife he was a dentist and she was a foot doctor in Philadelphia. They came up here on the weekends and whatever. And then he asked him, said, why don't you get involved in the Pocono Raceway? And he, I don't know anything about racing. And then Dr. Marioli, I don't know if you know where Pocono Laurel Lake is, he bought that and developed that and sold lots in there. It's right up from the Votech. And so finally Dr. Marioli got involved, and when he got involved, he really went forward with it and ended up buying everybody out, and then he got NASCAR involved, and the rest is history. I mean, they just and his family ran it and did a really good job for the area.
Was the Hawthorne Inn just one big building, or
No, the Hawthorne Inn was one building that had the dining room, had the kitchen, of course, and then a sitting room with the big fireplace. And then at that time they didn't have TVs in every room. And then on one side they had a TV room, and the other side was like a big room that we would have horse racing in, and then we would show movies one night a week and different things like
so there were
that.
cabins around?
And then they had, I think, 14 cottages around.
Okay.
They were all named after poets. Emerson, Kipling, and all these Longfellow, and it was...
and one family per cabin?
No, you had some cabins that had like 6 or 8 rooms, and then you had some that had 2 or 3 different rooms in there, and there were only a couple where I don't think there were any where just one family stayed.
So your job as a bellhop was to, people would come to the resort and they'd come to the main building and
They'd come to the
sign
main
in?
building to check in, and then I would take their luggage and whatever, and do
By
whatever they
hand,
wanted
you'd
to.
carry it, or?
Certainly, they didn't have, yeah. At that time, I was young, I could do that. I didn't need a cart or anything like that. And plus, the terrain was so, at that time, where you couldn't really have a cart. And I made a lot of good friends there from people that were guests that were there and employees that were there that we kept in touch with for a long time. For instance, my wife, as a waitress, the same people would come back and request these waitresses that they had, and then they would tip them at the end of the week. And as I said, the occupancy was usually close to 100% until at the time to where the vacation plans and whatever changed a great deal. And then when Mr. Dangler died, his kids took it over. And I actually ran it for the last 5 or 6 years that it was there. I
ran it?
Yeah, I ran it in the summer because I wasn't teaching, and so it was it was difficult because, as I say, we had the same chef for so many years, and then after he did everything, and we had what we call the stewards, a man and his wife. They did all the ordering and the dessert making and everything, so they took care of everything. You didn't have to worry about anything. But when they were gone, then you had to worry about everything. And then you'd have to worry about people that the day after they got paid, some of them wouldn't show up because they were out having a few libations, and a few too many libations that they couldn't come to work. And there was a little hotel on the road down to Mount Airy, not the main road. I don't know what the name of the road is. That goes down to where the nuns used to be, and that's where they would all be. So you'd go down there and pick them up, and or either call this place in Philadelphia to send them up. And but prior to that, the same dishwashers came back, the same everybody came back. You didn't have to worry about it.
So what year was, did it really start to?
I think, I don't know, I can't remember when the last year was actually. I think probably in the 70s, but I think probably the beginning of the 70s it started diminishing as far as occupancy rate and things like that.
So you were connected for like 15 years roughly or something?
Oh, I was in there from 15, 20 years.
Did you see a difference in the clientele over those years?
Not really. Not really.
Same family, same.
Yeah, same family. I mean, it was just a probably average middle upper class people or middle class that came that could afford to do it. And the food, there was 3 meals a day. Every day you had the same thing for, the menu was the same on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
So every Monday it was the same?
Yeah, same day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then every Saturday was filet mignon, and then I think Wednesday was prime rib, and I mean the food was out of this world.
Did they have activities planned?
Oh, you had activities. My wife and I, after we got married, the first year we were married, we were social directors. And then you had activities, you had tennis, and you had hikes. We would hike over to Pocono Manor, and then you had horseback riding down at Carson's Riding Stable at Blackwell's Corner. And then one night a week you would have a movie. And I think the thing that really amazed me is the first time this guy from New York, his name was Mr. Smith, he said, "Pat, turn on the TV for me." I turned on the TV and he gave me $5. And so I said, "This is pretty good." And I mean, $5 back then was pretty good. And so but it was very interesting. I really enjoyed it, and I kind of had the personality that I could get along with the guests. The guy that owns Taylor and Zipper was there once. He had a beautiful silk tie. I forget what his name was. I said, Mr. So-and-so, that's a beautiful tie. The next day I went to the Bellhop bench, the tie was there. And
You gave the tie.
yeah, things like that. And I kept up with some of the people that worked there for a long time. A couple Dennis McCullion lives up in Boston. I've been in touch with him over the years, and it was a life-changing experience for me to move to Pennsylvania, and it's something that I've really enjoyed, and I'm very fortunate in that I have made a lot of friends and some enemies. But you're going to do that anytime you can sit back and say nothing and do nothing, and then you're not going to have any controversy. But if you go out and you make decisions and do this and that, you're going to have people that don't agree with you. And so but I never really ever held anything personal against somebody. When we were supervisors in Pocono, we had a lot of development. A lot of time there may be a contentious meeting at the township, but when it was over, we would all get together and go to Smuggler's Cove and maybe have a drink and be civil to one another, and you could sit down and discuss things.
Is it that way today?
It's not. It's too bad that it's not that way today, because I followed politics since I was 14 years old. My grandfather, who worked in a textile mill and probably never made more than $50 a week, lived in a house that was owned by the company, shopped at a store that was owned by the company, but somehow he became very good friends with Strom Thurmond and Olin D. Johnson, who were the two senators at the time from Pennsylvania, and they just took a liking to him. And Strom Thurmond would take him to Democratic conventions, because Strom Thurmond in the beginning was a Democrat. And like when he went to Las Vegas, my grandfather bought all his grandchildren a silver dollar back from there. And so I was interested in politics, but people knew how to compromise then. They knew how to get along, and you could disagree. But unfortunately today, that disagreement and difference of opinion has turned into hate, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I just don't understand it, because I don't know. I'm just not made up that way.
Yeah.
And it better change.
What's that?
It's better change, and quickly.
Yeah, better change. Is there anything left of the Hawthorne House? Is it still there? Is it?
I'll tell you what's happening at the Hawthorn Inn right now. Hawthorn Inn is under an agreement of sale to a Joel Stemple from New York, who wants to put a kosher Jewish resort there. And I've been working with him and trying to help him get through the process. And it's in Paradise Township, and he's moving forward with it. Really nice gentleman, and he really wants to do something nice. And because he says there are no kosher places really in the United States. It's all kosher. He says, like during the holidays, his people, his friends or whatever, will have to go to Florida somewhere because they have nowhere to go close to New York. So he thinks that it'll do very well. So he's in the process of developing that now. And it's 7 beautiful acres. And there was a Menominee, which was a big hotel that sat up there on the top there. The foundation is still there, but that burned down many, many years ago. Yeah. And so it was as I say, Mr. Dangler was just a outstanding guy. And I saw what else he did for the community and whatever. I said, if I ever get the opportunity, I want to try to get involved in the community too. And that's one reason that I did.
So was the building still there, or the Hawthorne?
No,
Just the land?
No, all the cottages are still there, but the main building is somebody set it on fire or whatever. It was really a gorgeous old building. And,
Yeah, that's a great picture.
yeah, and you know, they had the shuffleboard and whatever. And the employees really got along well, and we would have our parties, we'd have softball games with the guests and whatever, and it was just a very nice situation.
Well, you've been involved in a lot of things. What are some of the accomplishments other than your family, I would assume, that you're most proud of?
My family, and I don't know. I just think. I mean, we developed Pocono Township, the crossings. A lot of people don't like that because of the traffic. I helped with Camelback's expansion. When I went to work with, when I was the supervisor at Santa Fe, when I went in, they had like 300 or 400 employees, and we worked with them. And when they left, they had 3,200 employees. And they were, at that time, very, very good to the community. They were very charitable and did many things. They started the community fundraiser, which has raised well over $1.5 million or $2 million to give out to the local charities. And they've just made a big impact on the community. And we work well with them. In fact, after I left as a supervisor, I went to work for Santa Fe, opened up a little small consulting firm, and I did consulting for Santa Fe for maybe 10 years. That's one of the things, and you know, just building up a nice road crew, and just kind of having a plan for Pocono Township to move forward and enjoy it.
Any plans to get back into it?
No, none whatsoever, especially now. No, I'm happy. I mean, I'm 82 years old, so, but I'm still involved in a lot of stuff. I'm on the, as I say, I'm on the advisory board at the Salvation Army Redevelopment Authority, which is at 701 Main Street. Involved in the church and Lions Club and.
Are you still with the ESU? Are you still on the foundation?
Yeah, I'm still on the Council of Trustees, the chair. I've been the chair the last 10 years. And, which is, there may be some people over there that don't like me, but what are you gonna do? And we're in the process of trying to get a president now, which is but the interim president, you may differ with, but I think he's done an outstanding job over there so far. It's very difficult. Very difficult.
Looking back on all the years you've been here in the Poconos, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen?
The biggest changes, of course, is after 9/11 when a lot of people moved up here because of they just wanted to get out of the city, and how they bought up a lot of houses, and they weren't used to living in the country. You know, when you're in the city, you pay your taxes and they take care of everything. But I sold real estate up here for a while as well, and they would always say, you know, if I was in New York, this would cost. I said, you're not in New York. You're in the Poconos, you're in this place, and this is what it is. You pay extra for your garbage, you pay extra for your sewer, and if you have to put a septic in, what's a septic tank? They had no idea what any of that was. And then they get up here, and then these mothers are back in the boondocks. Their husband goes to work, and then they're there back there and nowhere to go, don't know what to do, and whatever. And then I know the Pocono Mountain School District, I just know that because I'm in the district, is that sometimes the parents would go for the whole week and leave the kids home with the oldest kid looking after them. And then they would find that. And then I would say 50% of those people that moved here, I don't know what percent, probably left and went back. And then now you're having an influx after this latest pandemic and all that, where people are paying outrageous prices for houses and whatever. And the same thing's going to happen to them in 5 years. If they want to go to refinance or something, it's not going to be worth near as much as it is right now. That's what I think. And you know, it's not. Used to be the locals against the other people coming in, but I think most people have assimilated into where they look for the good of the Poconos. Most of the people are really good people, and it's, you know.
Would you say the locals have lost their identity as locals? Because people from the city have been living here for 20, 30 years.
Yeah. Probably to a certain degree, except in the local fire departments, you know, volunteer fire departments and things of that nature, and the clubs, because the people don't get involved that much because they don't have time, because they're traveling all the time, maybe not as much as they used to, but they just want to be with their families and do stuff on the weekends, so, and they're too tired at night to get involved in anything after doing all that traveling.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think, that's probably, but there's still things that local people identify, Snydersville Diner and, you know, different things like that, Stone Bar and whatever. But I mean, they were so many good places. A lot of people of Albino's was an Italian restaurant over there next to the Elks Club. It was a terrific restaurant. First time I ever had clams was there at the bar. They used to have clams and shrimp, 2 cents a piece at the bar.
Yeah, I forgot about Albino's too, just mentioned.
Yeah, that was great, and they were from Old Forge, and the mother was a cook, and when the father died, the son took over and was there, and a lot of people went there. Yeah.
So for the Hawthorne Inn, where did the food come from? Did you have a garden there, or did you order food?
We use it most. We order Pocono produce and Hallman's Creamery down in Solderton, and produce from Lewis Brothers, which was up in Pocono Summit, and the meat came from, I don't know where that came from.
But it would all be delivered on certain
Oh
days,
yeah,
I guess?
yeah, it'd come, yeah, it would deliver, and they'd be the same salesman, and they could, they knew exactly, you know, what to bring, and then that's who knew if anybody was doing business or not. You ask the food salesman and say, "Hi, so and so doing?" Well, they're not doing too good. Their order was down, and whatever. But back then, when you ordered it, you got it. If you ordered it now, you don't know if you go get it or not because of the supply chain and whatever. So it's very difficult today to be in business. And one thing that I always thought, I mean, we got what, 160,000 people in Monroe County. We have 20 different governments governing 160,000 people. Now just think about that. In addition to the boroughs, there's 4 boroughs and 15 second-class townships and 1 first-class township. I mean, and you have different rules and regulations for each thing. For instance, Pocono and Jackson are almost the same. Why don't they have the same rules and regulations for building permits and things of that nature? It's very difficult. And in Pennsylvania, I think they're, I forget, I don't know, I mean, 1,800 second-class townships, anywhere from 50 to 50,000 people. So it's just a lot of people to be governing that few people. And but I mean, people say you're going to move to Florida. I'm not going to move anywhere because I like it here. I have a lot of good friends, and I just like it.
I'm curious about your insights into ESU. You've been associated with that organization for a long time. What do you see? What do you see? We sort of talked a little bit before I turned the recorder on, but what's your impression of what's going to happen with the state system in ESU?
I think the state system has been in. Let me preface this. What I'm saying, I've said in public, at the PASHA board meetings, and everywhere else. They always know that ESU, we're going to say what we think. I think that the passage system is probably not going to last very much longer. You have schools with enrollment as low as 600, up to 14,000, which is Westchester. But you have others that have 1,200, 1,800, and whatever. And the program they're trying to do with integration is not going to work. We've been fortunate in that we've had a good Ken Long is a terrific financial person. We're the second most sustainable college in the whole system because of some of the prudent decisions they made. And when you're the president of the university or anything and you have to make decisions, you're going to make people mad. And you're going to have, and you were probably a member, they have a very strong union over there. And a president cannot really be a president. They're like a manager because they're tied by the collective bargaining agreement as to what they can do and what they can't do. So that's been the most difficult thing. But we're now working very well together because I think people see the writing on the wall that if you don't, it's not going to be a system whatsoever. I think there are probably 7 universities that's sustainable in the near future, and the others, which they'll never close because the House of Representatives and the Senate will have to vote to close it, and they aren't going to do that. And it's just, it's just not working the way it is now. And I don't know, how long were you at ESU?
22.
In the beginning, you never saw a sign for Kutztown or Indiana anywhere in this vicinity.
Right.
Because all the, we were all doing maximum, and it's, when I started in 1996, we got 66% of our funds from the Commonwealth. This year we'll get 17 to 18% from the Commonwealth. And so what it is now, it's a tuition-driven, that's where all the money comes from, the students. And that's what you have to put first, and a lot of people don't do that. It's going to be very difficult. You're going to have Mansfield, Lock Haven, and those. They're going to be lucky to survive. And
but when you say they're going to be lucky to survive, you just said that they would never close, right?
I know they won't, but it's they should. But there's nothing that we can do about that. And they're advertising, and there are a lot. I think it's down. When I started, there were like 130,000 students. Now it's down to 89,000 this year, students. And so there are less people graduating from high school, and there's much more competition. And because of contracts and all, of which we have no say in at ESU, they're all negotiated in Harrisburg. So we're getting these unfunded mandates that we have to enforce and to pay for, and they don't give you how are you going to raise the money. So what has happened is the tuition has gone up so much that with all the aid and whatever you get at Moravian or some of those schools, you could probably go to Moravian cheaper and some of those schools in Muhlenberg and Kings and Scranton, cheaper than you can go to a state school.
That's crazy.
Plus, Penn State University has 23 campuses around, and when you look at it, the 14 state universities are only the true state colleges. The others are state related. They get all the money. They do not have to show, they don't have to show where the money goes, whereas we do. So, but people say you're beating your head against the wall, but at least I tried, or we tried, because we, being teachers, we know the students are most important.
Well, you've been involved in a lot of things, and you've had a pretty interesting life so far. Are there any things that I should have asked you about, or that we seem to have passed over somehow?
I can't think of it, but as soon as I get in the car on the way home,
I can't tell you how many times. I think this happened the last time. As soon as I turn this machine off, all these new stories start.
yeah, it's no, it's been a good life, and
Do you have anything you want to ask?
I try to go back to the Hawthorne Inn. I just have another question. You said you came to Main Street to get your Bellhop uniform. And where did you go?
the Vivo Corsimo.
Okay. Did they sell uniforms?
No, they just did it, and then we got the gold stuff and put on them. No, it was a men's store, a very nice men's store. And so, see, back then, if at Hawthorne Inn, Mr. Dangler, he didn't call up. Cypher's Electric was big then. It was up there on in Martinsville, right there across from the candle shop. He didn't call up and say, Shorty, how much are the light bulbs? How much of this? Shorty, bring me 15 of these or 20 of these. If he needed something from Pocono Produce, he didn't call him up and ask him the price. He said, bring this up there. They just shop with all the local people. And heating and air conditioning and things of that nature, they all did local. And see, back then everyone knew everybody back in that point of time. And you had, when I first started, it wasn't a honeymoon thing. They developed into that. Morris Wilkins from Brookdale started all that. And that's just the way it was. You had all local people to do the work. At the beginning of the season every year at Hawthorne Inn, Ross and Ross Nursery would come up and plant all the flower around. You'd have the people, the guys, what's a guy's a historian up in Swiftwater that's a painter? You gotta know him. You gotta know him.
Yes, I have one of his prints from one of his paintings. Jacob John.
No, this is the guy that does house painting and stuff like that. You have to know his name. He has an auction company, auction too.
Jack Hamlin?
Hamlin. The Hamlin, they had a painting. They would come up there and paint and to get everything ready. And they did that every year.
And they relied on your business too.
Yep. Oh yeah, they did. And then every year, in the beginning of the year, Mr. Dangler would go to Security Bank at that time, and they would give him a loan to get started or whatever. And they went to Fort Lauderdale. The Danglers did in the winter, and then came back up.
What was the season? When did they open?
We opened around Memorial Day and closed Columbus Day. And I tell you what else, when I was a bellhop, I would use my car sometime to go to Pocono Summit or over to Cresco to pick up people that off the train. They rode the train up there to come here. And then, one thing that always helped, when the Radio Church of God used to come here for a convention, and they took every hotel room in the whole mountain. Guy's name was Armstrong. In fact, up by the airport up there, that big piece of property they brought up there, and he was a evangelist, filled everything. And in each hotel, you had, according to the size of the hotel, you had people that were in charge, and if you weren't doing what you were supposed to, they would send you home. And they gave you a dietary thing that they ate, and you fixed. I mean, that was a big boom to the Poconos.
You mean if a guest came and wasn't...
No, but they were all together. They assigned the rooms to everybody.
But if a guest came and maybe wasn't reading his Bible enough, they would send him home?
No, I don't think, just misbehaving or something like
getting
that.
drunk or something?
No, they didn't drink. Oh, no. They didn't drink.
Huh.
And it's, and I mean, he flew in his jet, and they were, they probably tithed more than, and then his son took it over and it went, phew. But no, that was something that was really big. It helped a lot of resorts.
Radio Church of God?
Yeah, Radio Church of God. The guy's name that ran it was Armstrong.
Huh.
I tell you somebody you ought to talk to. He's in Florida now about the resort business is Bob Ugassini. Because Bob was he was head of the Visitors Bureau from like 1968 until he retired maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And he would know all that.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah. And, but now they're doing well. They get a lot of room tax, of which they didn't get before. But it was very interesting. And it was also very interesting when they were trying to get gambling way back when they were meeting and whatever, and trying to get people to sponsor legislation. They couldn't get anybody from Monroe County to, or around this area, to sponsor anything for gambling. So what they did, they went out and got Senator Sweet and somewhere else to sponsor the legislation. Well, I was at a meeting at Smuggler's Cove where the senators and representatives had all these people that wanted gambling, closed the door, and I can't repeat what he said to them about going out of the area to try to get somebody to sponsor this and whatever. And you could see all these big, powerful people just sliding down in chairs like that. And so when it was over, he said, "Okay, that's it. No more. Let's eat and drink now." And opened the door, and that was it. But I think that people, when they were going to have gambling up here, they thought it was going to bring all kind of detrimental stuff. But I can't see that it's brought, and I must say that I'm associated with Mount Airy, but it hasn't brought anything detrimental to the area at all. And the thing now is the water parks. The number of people that they bring to the water parks is phenomenal. And they all three are doing really well. In fact, I think Great Wolf's getting ready to do like a $40 million expansion up there, going through the process.
Well, anything else, Amy? Or
That was wonderful.
well, that was great. That very interesting. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
So I think we'll turn it off and call it a day.
Yeah.